Okay, quick round of applause for our panelists. Okay, so we're into the lecture part, which I hope goes quickly, and I will be brief, and I rely as much as I can on our panelists and maybe one person from the audience when I get to that slide. Part two is when you get to ask some questions, and as I said, part three, we'll save the personal questions for out in the lobby when you get a chance to shake hands and meet and talk directly to the coaches and reps. What is college sailing and what isn't it? The first thing that I found a lot of people didn't really know, and this isn't a big deal really, but it's not a sanctioned NCAA sport. So if you go to Wikipedia or NCAA and you look up the sports that are sanctioned, that are official varsity sports, this is maybe getting a little old, but this was a fairly recent list, and sailing isn't there. What does that mean? Well, it really doesn't mean much. So how is sailing governed? It's governed by something called the ICSA, which is the Intercollegiate Sailing Association. It supports at least, this is probably incorrect, 230 college teams, and maybe more than that now. While there are no formal divisions, Division I football, Division III football, there are different levels of college sailing and different levels of regattas that we'll get into, which I think is fantastic because at all levels, with all commitment decisions that you may make as you go to college and do something other than sail, like academics, you can choose how much you want to kind of get involved. And that's, I think, something you may learn a lot from these people here later on. CollegeSailing.org is sort of the heartbeat online of this institution, and it's filled with great information. The website, in my tenure being associated with college sailing, has come such a long way, and it really is very good. As is their new scoring program, which really isn't new anymore, but it's revolutionized how we track the sport. This is also old, but very old, but it's not totally inaccurate. There has been a little bit of talk here and there about splitting some of these conferences, maybe not official, but having just done this as a high school coach, because high school sailing mirrors this exact, at least in the East, we're called Massa for high school sailing. It's the same purple area there. So as a high school team, we sailed in Norfolk, Virginia, and all the way up in Rochester. And that is a big, big geographical area, which is in some cases then dwarfed by CISA. So there's a lot of geography out there in these districts. And here they are again. I'm not going to, we'll save specific stuff. NISA, what is NISA all about? One thing that might be, you might have to wear a dry suit in NISA. It has at least 40 colleges, and this is a sort of promo from the group. Again, this is very old, but they compete and they have a ton of regattas. One of the things that Jimmy mentioned, or maybe someone else mentioned as well, is that travel in NISA, if you're lucky enough to be near Boston, doesn't always mean a really long ride. For better or for worse, the Charles River in many ways is a sort of epicenter of college sailing that is surrounded by venues like Tufts and BC that allow you not to have to travel a lot all the time, although the top teams do travel as well anyway. NISA offers a lot of levels. They have, when I was coaching up there, they had something called the Eastern Series, which was like a JV level, and I know other districts have that now as well. That's a beautiful picture of MIT. The High School Sailing Nationals were just there last spring, and Fran Charles and the MIT staff, as well as the sailors, do a phenomenal job of offering sailing to all levels. And as I said, this is a can't-miss place for college sailors. You won't be able to escape it if you sail in college a lot, even if you want to. It is cold. You can sail with ice. So that's one feature of NISA. How does NISA do against each other? This, I believe, is the latest or the last ranking that they did of themselves in a pretty discrete format that they have there. So you can kind of get a sense of, and this is the top 25. I had to cut it off because I ran out of slideshow area. Yale is obviously doing pretty well. Dartmouth is right up there. Roger Williams, which is here tonight, obviously Amanda's team is and this isn't necessarily a perfect reflection. It involves a little bit of historical data, but it gives you a sense of, somewhat of the pecking order in NISA. There's Joe. All right. Would anyone from Mesa like to say something about Mesa? Why is Mesa the best district? Or is it the best district?
Say some votes now.
So Mesa currently has Mid-Atlantic Collegiate Sailing Association currently has 53 schools, ranging from big varsity programs with tons of boats to small club teams. It's just a few people and a few boats down on a lake somewhere. So it's a really wide variety of teams and programs. Mesa, we kind of have the best of both worlds in that it's not super cold all the time, but there are a lot of colleges and a lot of regattas around. So we kind of have that level of similar to New England, a ton of schools, a ton of regattas, but it's a little bit warmer, a little bit more civilized through the spring season. Mesa is a great place to sail, and there is something for everyone in the Mid-Atlantic region.
Anybody else? Is that good?
I think Alan and Dana both said it the best earlier, is that we don't have to use dry suits. And there's a lot of sun, it's warm. There are a bunch of really competitive teams, varsity level teams, and then again you have your club teams, you have a whole mix of everything. It is a pretty big district, but we're split north and south, so it's not as much traveling as you'd think. I'd say most of our stuff, most everything is within 4 hours, and then bigger regattas within SASA, then we're traveling a little more. But we sail, we've got College of Charleston, who's #1 in the country. So you have really great competition between the teams in SASA, and it's warm.
You've got competitive-wise, it's growing too. You're seeing the teams in the Southeast become more sophisticated and more competitive. So of the conference, we've got 5 varsity programs, 30-something clubs. Those clubs are becoming competitive, and the cool thing about sailing at a Southeastern college is you're going to immerse yourself in big college life, especially you're thinking like college football games on the weekends and sailgates. And we do it right. We have coastal conditions, you have lake conditions, and you can't speak enough for just the commitment that the conference has made to continue to expand the level of competition, whether it's through clinics that teams are hosting to educate and bring sailors up, to bringing on new elements of regattas, bigger regattas, interconference regattas that are being hosted around the conference. So fun to sail in SASA, and come join us.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you, Dana. I think that Dana and John both have done an amazing job. I've been with SASA in college coaching now this is my 3rd year, and these 2 guys particularly have really brought the level of SASA up. We like to push ourselves within the conference. We're very competitive. We're all sailors. We're all really, really competitive, but we do work together quite well as a conference, as well as NISA, as well as Mesa, as well as all these schools. But we do have the advantage that we do have some warmer weather, warmer climates. And during spring break, we get a lot of schools from the Northeast and from Mesa come down and do spring training in SASA. They do a lot of schools go to College of Charleston, they come to JU. I don't know how many schools you have, Dana. I know I have 8 already lined up to come to us. So it's a busy time. The only downside is we do at the A-level events have to travel up here to Mesa or to NISA, and we drive, except for John, or we fly. John drives. John does not like driving.
No.
But it's a good chance for you to get and to know your teammates, and the assistants fly. But it's a good chance for your kids I'm talking to the parents here, to get together with their other teammates and learn how to bond, learn how to work together, because I've seen it, especially with the freshmen when they come in, they get a little shell shock, and it's nice every single one of these programs up here will do it, is that they have a way of keeping the kids together and a support system for all the students. And I know that Allison and I and a lot of the guys in CESA, a lot of the teams in CESA, we do this, and we do a lot of driving, but we push that team mentality. And this college sailing in general, no matter where you go, is a good support group for your children when they go off to college.
Yeah, Alan hits a neat point. You're gonna, if you like road trips, you want to sail in the CESA because you're gonna go on road trips every weekend. Whether it's from Knoxville to Oriental, North Carolina, to Charleston, to Jacksonville, to St. Pete. But you'll also know that you'll get to know teams, the other teams and the other sailors in this conference really well, because there's the social and hospitality side of our conference. I'm sure in New England you guys get to know each other because you're sailing so much against each other, but when we go to Jacksonville, we stay with the team, or when they come to Raleigh, or you're seeing a lot more, I think, just social connectivity between the programs on and off the water. So that's a cool part of CESA.
Cool. Thank you very much. CESA, do we have maybe?
Yeah, so Texas A&M Galveston, we're part of CESA. I'm Jeff, I'm the other A&M Galveston guy here. I'll tell you a very short story about CESA. I grew up in Connecticut. I knew nothing about CESA. It was February. I flew down to look at Texas A&M Galveston. It was 75 degrees. They invited me to sail with them, and there were dolphins jumping alongside the 420. So that's pretty much a good description. It's just beautiful weather down there. The wind is incredible down along the Gulf Coast. And another large benefit of CESA is we're very centrally located. So the teams there tend to travel to the east and west coast and down to Florida quite a bit. So if you're looking to sail in vastly different venues across the country, CESA is a great place. And Texas sailing, especially in the Dallas area, really gets undersold in high school sailing. I think that they produce some pretty incredible sailors. So, CESA doesn't always get the respect for how competitive it can be, but there's some phenomenal sailing down there, and the conditions are just wonderful. So, look forward to talking to you guys outside, and encourage you to make the trip down in the winter to fully appreciate it.
Great, thank you very much. Next is Northwest. I know very little about the Northwest. I've been there once. We sailed in Anacortes. It's beautiful. There's a list of, if anyone on the panel here has Northwest experience, certainly more than me, which wouldn't be difficult. These are some of the schools, and maybe more now, that are listed with them. And to me, it seems to be a little bit less hyper-competitive division. This geographically based, which is the epicenter of college sailing since inception, really has been the East Coast of the United States, and that has obviously expanded to the country. But Northwest is a beautiful part of the world.
I can say a little bit. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest and practiced for high school in Western Washington University. The district as a whole only has club sport teams. It's dictated by the district. So in general, the focus of the district is, yes, sailing, but we want to get better as a district in sailing, but we also want to develop each member of every team as a person, as a leader within their team. So these teams are in charge of organizing coaching, organizing fundraising, getting their teams places, getting boats places, everything like that, which are the skills that enable you to do things like that on your own. Being as competitive as we can, but also developing each sailor as a person with the skills that you need to get things done.
Excellent, thank you. There's more. I'm not sure they would never use dry suits. All right, Pacific Coast, dominated maybe in the last several years or decade to some degree by Stanford. The reality of the West Coast district is travel, and I think that Stanford as a top program seeks competition in many cases elsewhere. Not to pick on Stanford, they're an incredible program, and they come to the East Coast quite a bit. But again, this is not nowhere near my area of expertise. I've sailed there briefly and coached there, but I'm not from the West Coast. Does anyone here have West Coast experience? Some more information. We're going to move right on. We have Midwest.
All right, so in addition to being here with CNU and UVA, my name is Sam Patterson. I run a community sailing center on Lake Erie in Cleveland, and have gotten really involved with Midwest collegiate sailing lately. Like the Pacific Northwest, the MCSA is really, really student driven. It's not dictated by the district that you be a club team, but a vast majority of the teams are. There still are some really, really competitive teams. Wisco and Minnesota are regular attendees at really, really high level regattas and nationals. But everything is really, really student driven. So you've got students putting together all the regattas. We just hosted the MCSA Fall Champs, and it was completely organized between me, my volunteers, and 3 undergraduates who pulled the entire event together. So it's really, really cool. There's a lot of that camaraderie when we host regattas. It's a requirement that when you're hosting regattas, you provide housing for any students or teams that need it. So, we've got teams staying with each other like they do in SEISA and really getting to be a really tight-knit group. It is cold. It's the Great Lakes. We have a lot of snow, a lot of cold, but a lot of really, really good sailing, a lot of big open water sailing on the Great Lakes, as well as some of that more tricky inland lake sailing.
All right, thank you very much. So that's a quick look at the districts. We're going to go through this really quickly, but I'd like to not talk about this and have maybe the panelists describe some of this differences, in types of programs. Varsity versus club. You heard from Quentin that, for example, Brown is a club team. And what does that mean? They actually have a full-time head coach. You would think off the cuff that a club team would not have a full-time head coach. So in some cases it may be semantics, but there are substantive differences in some cases. As you explore college sailing, both as a recruited athlete or as parents of a recruited athlete, things to maybe think about are, what level do I want to enter this world in? What commitment level am I prepared to make, and what will that take? And those are questions that these young women and gentlemen can help you with. Do you want to be nationally competitive? Well, there are several up here that are that and more. Do you want to be maybe regionally competitive, sometimes nationally, which is a step down? Do you want a service academy experience, which for many is an absolutely incredible path, and it offers not only job security, but an incredible sense of course, commitment and service to your country, as well as essentially some of the top programs in the country. That's a pretty impressive list there of sailing schools that are service academies. District level competition, informal student club run programs, we've heard from those as well. They offer incredible sailing opportunities. There's some where I was from, and when I was coaching in NISA, we would have our second team or our third team sail with and against some of the club teams, and they seem to have an enormously fun time in college sailing. So there is something there for everyone. Other factors affecting teams and types of teams is geography. We've heard a lot about that. Whether a team makes cuts. Back in the dark ages, when I was involved in college sailing as a player, where I was, there were no cuts. And you just the more you showed up and the better you did, the more regattas you went to. But that may not be true at certain institutions. And I know for a fact that many now institute, like other programs, cuts. Is there a coach? Is the coach fully funded? Is there a fully funded assistant coach? Those are pretty big tells at how committed the school is to this sport. It really is the bottom line in many ways. There are other things that I'm sure you will ask. And bottom line, of course, there at the end is what's best for you. And that can be a difficult journey, but this is old. This is a ranking that we're a year old. We're going to move right beyond that. You heard from a few of, especially the service academies, there's a bunch of different types of college sailing that you can do. Co-ed dinghy sailing is typically the one that you think of first. That, in many ways, is the most prominent. There is a women's division in dinghy sailing as well. Women's All-Americans and a Women's Sailor of the Year award now. Team racing, of course, many people's favorite part of dinghy sailing. Single-handed men, single-handed women, mostly, of course, in lasers. And those championships, those national championships, are actually held in the fall, as well as match racing, which ended fairly recently, I believe, EC1 matches. And there are keelboat events. You saw some pictures of Navy 44s. You heard Naval Academy has a pretty impressive list of donated offshore racing boats, and so forth. So a lot, ask about these different types of sailing. Amanda, I don't know if you'd be willing to tackle or speak to this question from Morgan Wilson, or an observation really, about young women coming up in sailing and thinking about where they fit in, and any thoughts on that? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I think advice that I would give to girls in the room about sailing in college and even making decisions when they're in high school sailing, sometimes, especially in the Mid-Atlantic, right, all events are co-ed. So if you are of a competitive mindset, you might say, I think my best shot of competing in events in this high school level is moving to the front of the boat. Don't do it. I find our best crews on our teams, they have driving experience. Not that your end goal is to be a crew. Like we need lots of women driving and infusing college sailing in the back of the boat. So don't feel pigeonholed into making a transition to the front of the boat, because we definitely need you in the back of the boat.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, because I'm actually a father of 2 daughters. One's in college now and is sailing, and one is an up-and-coming senior. So I've been sitting where you guys have been sitting for the past year, talking to rowing coaches. Do not let your daughter get pigeonholed into thinking, oh, I'm a girl, I need to be in the crew. They need to sail, they need to drive. I think that sailing is one of the few sports that is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter your gender, you can go out there and win a national championship in either co-ed or women's. The girl from Coast Guard can prove that. Nikki Barnes is probably one of the fastest sailors on the planet. And she can sail any given day of the week in co-ed or women's.
I think women's college sailing is something that in the 5 or 6 years that I've been involved, we've seen grow in the Southeast to the point where nearly all of the major active programs in SAISA have a women's program that's close to sustainable, meaning you've got enough women that can participate in those events and field the team that you need to for your co-ed events. And sailors, women coming in that are either have experience skippering or are ambitious to take on that experience and that challenge, that is the linchpin in the continued growth of women's sailing, at least in our conference, because events hinge on team participation, and when it takes 4 people to represent your school at an event, and you can't do that, that's a really tough program, like level to maintain. And so having more women involved in sailing and more women in all positions is really important to that. So I echo those thoughts.
Great, thank you. And this is just a more reiteration or a little more detail on the fall championship and the spring championships, when they occur and when they are decided. Daily schedule is something you may want to ask. The ICSA sets practice limits, in fact, you cannot practice more than 4 times a week, things like that, and I'm not up on those. These guys are. What's the daily schedule like? Do you have to drive to the venue? You heard about MIT, you could just sort of walk across the street and you're right there. The level of de-rigging every day, what commitment do you have to put into it at Tufts and Dartmouth as well? We took the rigs out of the boat every day and put them in a shed. So there are all sorts of different little pieces that are put together. And those are things you want to ask. Boats sailed primarily, most of us know this, are the 420. There's several versions of it now. There's the Turbo 420, there's the Z420, there's the E420. They look from a distance all about the same. We're not going to go into the subtle differences too much tonight, But there are differences, and there are reasons that each school purchases the boats that they do. As you get more into it, I think that's sort of a next level question. But FJs and 420s traditionally have been the dinghy of choice, with variations here and there in New England, especially with the Tech and the holdout over at Tufts with the Larks. And then lasers or the single-handed boat, and then match racing uses different boats based on the year. Quite often J22s. And the Navy 44 is of course the choice for many offshore races because the Academy has so many of them. And they host the Kennedy Cup and the Mack Cup. More awards. The Fowl Trophy is for the overall best sailing team. There are 6 national championship trophies. Of course, there are in-season championships, district-level championships, intersectionals, and there are local series regattas. I mentioned the Eastern Series that used to be in New England. There are a lot of those, I'm sure, in other districts as well, and not technically JV events, but second-tier events that allow all different experience levels to get involved. The life of a college sailor. This is a big thing to consider. We have a graduate here from not only Severn School but Brown University, and if she would be willing to speak quickly on what it's like to be a competitive college sailor. This is Liddy Weichner.
Hi, I'm Liddy. Yeah, I as Tom said, I learned to sail here at Severn and then went on to sail at Brown and actually coached Brown for a year after I graduated as well. I don't have a ton to say about this. We've covered a lot of it pretty well, but it's a job, really. When you get to college, it's a lot, and obviously depending on the school that you go to and the type of team that they have, but it's a lot of commitment. Practice 4 days a week, you're sailing. It's different from other sports in that you're not competing for an hour in a game and you're done. It's sailing all day for 2 days on the weekend, and then you get in the van, you drive home, and it's a lot. But it's extremely worth it. Something that people already touched on, the bonds that you make with your teammates, you're with them more than you're with anybody else, including your family. They become really your second family. You learn so much from them, from your coaches, just from spending so much time with them, and it ends up being some of the best relationships that you can make. It is definitely, I guess that the other thing is I never sailed before high school. I learned to sail in high school, and if you think that you're like, I really want to sail in college, but I don't know if I'm at the level, that's not. Most teams, all teams, there will be someone there that you can learn from. You can dive right in. If you have the passion for the sport, it'll pay back. So that's one of the biggest things is you shouldn't be dissuaded from trying to do this just because you don't know if you are at the level of some of the other people you might see who are getting recruited. All different levels have a big role in making college sailing what it is.
Scholarships. I will spend very little time. What's the rule on scholarships, coaches? Okay, there it is. I think it's still Rule 12F. No student athletes shall receive financial assistance to attend college based on sailing ability. That is the reality of college sailing. Certainly, being an experienced and successful sailor as a high school student is something that's looked well upon on your application. And that will get us into recruiting a little bit in a moment. But there are very strict rules about scholarships. Recruiting. Put these all down since I have to stand back there to move it. This is something that I'm just going to leave up here. I think I want to get to the end of this as quickly as possible so that you can talk to, as I said, to the experts. These may be things to consider. They may be things that you want to ask. As a former college coach, I spent a fair amount of time off-season in the admissions office. Great sailing teams, it's not a long trail to get to the point where you know that they also have great sailors. These are questions that you may want to ask each of these institutions. And the thing that I always learn every year is that the better you do in school, the better your chances of getting into a great school are, and I mean academically. And school obviously is the most important thing, bar none, in grades, transcripts, and recommendations. That will help your recruiting a great deal. Final thoughts about that. Things you may think about. We're going to move to part 2. Does anybody have questions of the panel? Yes?
I have a question. I'm a mom, correspondent, and sit in a lot of lawn chairs with a lot of chatter amongst the parents. And mostly it's a lot of chatter about who got into what school and why. So you don't really know what's rumor, what's not. So what I'm trying to figure out is now I'm really in the thick of admissions. If your child, you go on like the computer and it says, okay, your kid can get into this school because of GPA, SAT. Because they sail, should you push the envelope a little bit because they're a sailor and try to get into schools that you wouldn't get in because of the GPA and the SATs?
Does that answer depend on the school?
Yeah, it really does depend on the school and the coach and what type of program they have. Some coaches with varsity sports will be able to talk with the admissions and say, hey, this is a kid that I'd like on the team, can we take a look at him? But if it's a school that you visited and a school that you want to go to and you're just on the edge, or even just a little bit below where you think you need to be, send the application out, talk to the coach, talk to the school, let them know that you really want to go there, because that may be more important than what your test score says. If you really want to be there, you'll put in more effort to be there, right? So it just depends on the school and what your level of interest is.
Anybody else? Okay, any other questions? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. For this part of our evening is over, and we can adjourn outside. And there are, as I said, there are drinks. Thanks to the parents of Severn School Sailing up on top of the stairs, and some snacks. So we'll adjourn out there, and we'll see you there. Thank you for coming to the College Sailing 101 Symposium. I hope you got some good information. We may have the video out in the lobby a little bit, but we would recommend, as great as this video is, and as much as we thank the professional services of T2P TV, that you come here and actually meet these people in person. We've been doing this now for several years, and one of the most important feedbacks, one of the most common feedback themes that we get is that when I actually met Quentin or Sam or whomever the coach might be or the rep might be, that really made a difference. And we hear that actually from the coaches as well when we ask for feedback from this event, and they say, boy, I got 2 recruits from this event because I met them personally and they were engaging and so forth. So we hope you can make it next year, same time, same place, and really thank you for watching.